Hey, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Daily Double Maseches Eiruvin Perek Hey Mishnayos Gimel and Dal. Mishnah Gimel says V'chein shlosha kvarim shaloshin. Yesterday we learned about this concept of besides 2,000 amos, you also measure 70 and two-thirds amos away from the borders of the city. According to the Rabbanan, it's only in a case where by doing that you have to measure from two cities next to each other. By adding an extra karfef, it's called a yard to the border of a city, the edge of a city, before counting 2,000 amos, you're going to be able to have two cities overlap. So what about if you have three cities? Mishnah Gimel says, you have three villages, small cities. They're, let's say, in a line, right? Three in a line, but they're far away from each other. So there's another cooler Rabbanan said, like we said yesterday in Mitzion, that when there's a necessity, we do rely on this concept of v'chutzala that we learned from Eiruvin. And therefore, if you have, let's say, city 1, city 2, and city 3, 2 is the middle. So between city 1 and city 2, if you give 72 amos to the middle and 72 amos to city 1, city 2, so therefore that'll bring them together. You don't have to start counting 2,000 amos. And also, the third, between 2 and 3, if you give 72 amos to city 2 and 72 amos to city 3, which is a total of 141 and one-third amos, so that connects all three cities. And again, according to the Rabbanan, when it's necessary, when it's something which is going to help, maybe make it easier to travel, so therefore you can travel all three cities and you can actually count the 2,000 amos from the edge of the other city. So if you're in city 1, your 2,000 amos extend 2,000 amos from the edge of city 3. And if you're city 3, your 2,000 amos extend from the edge of city 1. So again, this is where a case where it's practical to use. So the Rabbanan would say you'll be able to use this karfef idea. When you measure the 2,000 amos of the tchum, you take a rope. It has to be exactly 50 amma of the rope. Lo pachos v'lo yoser, not more and not less. V'lo yimdod ela keneged libo. When you measure it, both people should hold a rope around their heart, and each one of their heart, so it's straight, so it's not less or not more. Let's say you got to a valley, or you got to a fence or something like that. Basically, one person stands at one end of the valley, other person stands at the other end of the valley. You don't measure going down. That's not included. It has to be, horizontal, not, vertical. We don't count. Or if it's a fence, you put it in between the fence, right? You want to measure straight. You don't want to measure up and down. Until you get to a mountain. So what you do, according to the Tanakama, again, basically you try to go to the side of the mountain and make it a straight line. However, let's say you get to a valley, or you get to a mountain, or you get, to a place where you have to go from one, you have to stand on one edge of the earth that's, at the other end of the valley. So if the other end of the valley or end of the mountain is out of the tchum, is outside the 2,000 amos, you can't do that. People are going to think, they see you measuring, that's the tchum, so you can't measure in that case. In that case, I guess you have to use an omed. For example, you have to estimate. For example, also when you have a mountain, the Rav Vajra says that it depends how steep the mountain is. If it's a very steep mountain, for example, steep enough that if you walk 5 amos, you're going to raise 10 tefachim. So if it's less than that, within 5 amos, you're already at 10 tefachim. So in that case, you can't measure through havla. You have to actually just make an omed, an estimation of how big, of how lengthwise the har is, even though you can't measure it exactly. Now, we're talking about a mountain over here. If you have a mountain which is very steep, according to Rabbi Dostai, Rabbi Yana, name Rabbi Meir, in this case, you actually have to drill through the mountain. When you drill through the mountain, doesn't mean exactly drill through the mountain. The Gemara explains basically you take a rope, instead of a rope of 50 amos, take a rope of 4 amos, and you measure in increments, small increments, going on the mountain. There's the side of the mountain. So you measure, it's an interesting way to measure. One person holds it by his heart, one person holds it by his feet. And that way you get a pretty exact distance, even by a mountain, as opposed to using only. According to the Tanakhama, you use an estimation. If it's a very steep mountain, you use estimation. According to Rabbi Dostai, Rabbi Yana, he says you have to be exact over here. This halacha only applies by Tchumen. However, when it comes to Ari Miklat, or Ari Levim, or it comes to Egla Rufa, another case where you measure, you found the person dead between two cities and you want to measure which city it came from. So you have mountains to measure. So in that case, you'd use this estimation, even according to Rabbi Dosta Rabbi Yanai. The only time you have to be exact, according to him, is exactly by Tchumen. We pass him like the son of Rabbi Yanai. For Tchumen, you have to be more exact. Why is that? We'll talk about that in Iyum Mitzion coming up next.